Hello and welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
This is the podcast for you if you like weird shit.
That's right.
We like mysteries. We like the unsolved murders. We like the solved murders.
That's right, because sometimes those are just as interesting as the unsolved murders. And more satisfying in some ways.
Yes,
sometimes.
we like to delve into what made this person this way, or why did they do the things they do. You can't always know that, but...
No, sometimes that's the most compelling part. That's why I like psychology. But
yep, we like monsters.
Monsters.
And, of course, we love mayhem. We try to spread it everywhere we go.
We are mayhem. That's right. And also, just to get this out there now, not safe for work, the show has mature content. That's the little checkbox that I check when I upload it to our host.
It does not have mature hosts.
That's right. Immature hosts, but mature content. So there will possibly be profanity, and there will most certainly be death and dismay and
dismemberment.
Dismemberment sometimes.
If you say death, you almost have to say dismemberment.
It's true. It's one of those things, death and dismemberment, hue and cry.
Yes.
Ebb and flow.
Frickin' frack.
That's us too. So who are you, Frick?
Today, the role of MB Partlow is being played by MB Partlow.
Huh.
I'm a writer. I'm a podcaster. I am an organizer. I'm sticking with it. I like it, and I am sticking the fuck with it.
I'm sorry, you can't be a cryptozoologist and an organizer. I don't know why. It's just the new role.
All right. Well, this week, I'm an organizer. It's a new season. I'm giving up my dreams of cryptozoology. Going strong on the organizing.
Yes, and welcome to season 2, by the way.
And who are you, Frack?
Well, chaos? Am I chaos in this relationship? Loki? I am Shannon Lawrence. Oh, I'll be Loki. I love me a trickster god. My God.
Yeah, yes.
I'll be Coyote. All right. He's one of my favorite trickster gods, of course. But Loki's up there too. Anyway, I'm Shannon Lawrence. Horror author supreme. You can find me at thewarriormuse.com. And that's all I'm going to say to introduce myself today.
All right.
Look at that. Nice and brief.
Yes. Welcome to season 2. I hope you enjoyed your break.
Yeah. Fun fact. Do we want to tell them the truth? We have not yet taken our 2-week break, which is the weird thing about how we split this. But sure, we're feeling super rested. We hope you are too.
We're rested.
And we're really hoping you came back after that 2-week gap. That's a scary thing about taking a break.
Yes, we are rested. We are refreshed. We've each lost 10, 15 pounds.
That would be amazing.
Wouldn't it? That's a lot for 2 weeks. How about 5?
All right.
Body by vinaigrette.
That's right. Oh, hopefully right now we're enjoying the sun, and we will be taking off 2 weeks before it airs, though, just so you guys know.
Yes.
Shannon needed 2 weeks off.
And MB just is off. So, we decided we're going to do this at the top of the show instead of at the bottom.
That's right.
If you would like to contact us, or you would like to see some of the extras, because we do put all of our sources and all of the extra stuff we talk about, the books and the movies and the restaurants and all that stuff, we do put that on Facebook. We're on Instagram. On Facebook, we are Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Same on Instagram.
Our email is mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com. There's no and in it. And our website is mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
That's right. And there is a form there for you to submit. We didn't ask at that last episode for people's stories, did we?
We did not.
That's what we screwed up on by changing it to the beginning then.
Well, we do want your stories.
Yeah, and hopefully this time at the end of this episode we'll remember to ask you for some specific kinds, calls to action.
We are going to ask a specific question at the end of today's episode.
We are going to do that too. Separate.
But there will not be a quiz.
No, it's okay if you can't answer this question. There's no right answer, but you don't get to hear what the question is till the end of the show.
That's right.
And just, our pictures will be posted on Instagram from now on, not on Facebook. So look for them there. If we refer to a picture in the episode that we're going to post, that'll be on Instagram.
There are pictures of Typhoid Mary from the end of last
Is there like
season.
a green, is she like what is it, Pigpen and she's just
no,
circling
but they
around
have
her.
this horrible cartoon of her where she's standing there and it's a cartoon figure with like an apron on, and she's like exhaling into a pan of food, and the exhale has skulls in it.
Nice. You should post that one too.
I will try to post that one.
Okay.
So what have you been watching lately?
What have I been watching? Again, it was a lax week. Sadly, that will not continue after this because I'll be back. I'll be in a new term of school. But so I did watch Coming to America, the new one, Coming with the number 2 in the middle, and I liked it. I don't know if it was because you seemed somewhat underenthused by it that I enjoyed it more, because it's that thing like if you go in expecting a lot, then it's disappointing. Okay. But if you go in like,
I liked it.
Yeah. See, you said it that way the first time too, and that's why I went in like, I don't know.
Somebody else though I saw posted the exact same. I think it might have been Jade who posted the exact same criticism in that in the first movie you got to see the romance develop. The relationship build. And you didn't get that.
There wasn't a romance the second time.
It was.
I honestly, and I even said it when you brought it up, like, is Arsenio going to get to have a romance? No. But Arsenio's not into romance. His character is not into romance. So that's okay then. All right, so I watched some weird stuff. I'm just going to tell you about the weird stuff. What? Okay. I watched a horror movie called Slaxx, Slaxx.
Yes.
It was a Shudder exclusive, and it's about killer genes. Literally killer genes. They're killer on and they're killer off.
I so want to see that now, but
it's pure cheese.
Yeah.
And I quite enjoyed it. And then I watched something, that was on Shudder, and then I went to like Hulu or something and got thrown down this loop. So I watched something called Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader, which was made just a couple years ago. And that was amusing. And then that led me directly to a movie called Teresa's Tattoo.
Hold on. Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader.
You're writing it down. And
whose tattoo?
Teresa's. It was Teresa's Tattoo. Anyway, this is like, I think it was made early 90s. Here's the thing. There were so many people in it. So like 3 people names? From Young Guns.
Oh, wow.
Lou Diamond Phillips, Kiefer Sutherland, and I never know how to say his last name. It's like Charles Chamashko or something like that.
I know who you mean. I don't know how to
Yes, he plays Charlie in Young Guns. And his sister is an actress too, I think. With the same last name, so I'm not going to say it. And then, oh my God, there just were so many people. Like that one caught my attention because at first it's the 2 and they're working together. Charles and Lou Diamond Phillips. And Lou Diamond Phillips is greasy. Like he's got the long hair and he's got but not like native long, like 70s. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay. And it's amusing. It's this woman kind of gets kidnapped because these people have, C. Thomas Howell is in it.
Oh my God.
As one of the bad guys. Okay. But anyway, they've kidnapped this one woman. They're holding her for something. They want something that her brother has. And her brother is Charles. And damn it, I don't want to refer to him anymore.
Okay.
And she ends up dying because she's dumb. Like, they don't kill her.
Oh.
She's just dumb, and she has an accident, and she dies.
Oh, God.
So they find this girl who looks like her, and they kidnap her, and they make her up to be the sister so that they can get the thing they want. And it's just this whole little crime caper. So it's fun. I think it was on Hulu. I'd never heard of it before.
I've never heard of it.
But it was one of those things that popped up because you watched this, and I'm like, okay.
Have you ever heard of a movie called Supervised?
Yes, and I have it in my queue in Hulu. Right?
I have watched it.
Louis Gossett Jr.,
Tom Berenger, and Beau Bridges.
Yes.
And they're all retired superheroes living in a superhero retirement home.
So you watched it?
I did.
It's good.
And it's got like, it's like it has a super defense system, but it's not really keeping things out. It's keeping them in. So there's this thing you can do where they decide you need to have your powers supervised and you need to have them taken away from you. And it's this whole, and Tom Berenger is like, what the hell's going on here? And it's got some very amusing moments.
Okay.
I was like, I'm watching it going, what the fuck is this and why have I never heard of it?
I had not heard of it either, and it just kind of popped up, and so I added it to my queue, and I told Jeff we have to watch this together, which is why we haven't watched it, because we keep forgetting, because I didn't just start it when I saw it. That's how I ended up watching this weird shit.
Well, you're used to superhero movies being all the young, pretty people.
Yeah.
Or, if not young, then younger. I mean, in the prime of their lives, pretty people, and these people are not. And it opens with a full nude from the back of Tom Berenger.
Huh.
And it's like, there's no soft focus. It's what he looks like.
Okay.
So.
Was that a good or bad thing? How old is he?
It was neither good nor bad. It was just reality.
That was funny because I was just reading trivia about Sam Elliott because I watched Sibling Rivalry with Kirstie Alley and Scott Bakula and him, which, by the way, is the hardest frickin' movie to find anywhere. Like, it's an expensive DVD. It's not on any of the streaming things. So, Jeff found it for me. But, because I looked up to see if there was trivia about, because he has had that head tilt for a really long time. It's more exaggerated now if you watch the show with, is it Ashton Kutcher and then
the ranch.
Yeah. So, but now I've started noticing it when I watch him in an older role that he always kind of did that head tilt. So anyway, I didn't find anything about that. But it said, is a really good transition word here. It said that there's a full back view of him on a movie called The Lifeguard he did in the 70s, and it's like rated the highest, like, woo, shot there is. That just made me think of that when you said, here's Tom Berenger at his age, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, but Sam Elliott, apparently there's a great backside view of Sam Elliott in a movie I haven't seen him in.
Backside view.
Are you writing that down?
I'm going to look this up.
I think it's called, what was it? The Lifeguard or something like that in the 70s. I've never heard of it. But anyway, that was a strange transition. But
I'm like, I'll be sending you'll be getting an email or a
but I'm really curious if anybody knows like trivia about the head thing he does. Because now it seems like his head's kind of stuck that way, like he's always, but then I'm looking in Sibling Rivalry, he's doing it all the time. And I don't know if it's just something that he did that ended up kind of sticking, or if he had an issue that led to it.
He was briefly on Grace and Frankie.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember if his head tilted in that or not. I don't.
Now you'll notice it every time you watch him in something.
I will.
Because he does a certain tilt.
But now I watched something that you recommended.
Uh-huh.
Kid 90. Did we talk about this?
No, we didn't. I had it written down to talk about this time, actually.
Oh, good. It was, so, the setup is, Soleil Moon Frye, who played Punky Brewster, kept, oh my God, meticulous.
She videoed everything. She kept her answering machine tapes. She kept journals.
Yeah, and she had all this, and she'd kind of packed it away and hadn't looked at it for 20 years, and just decided, I don't know what.
You know what it is? Guess what? There's a Punky Brewster show out now. She's the mom, though.
Yes.
She's Mom Punky Brewster.
I really loved the opening because it's all this video. And you're thinking Soleil Moon Frye. Okay, she's playing Punky Brewster. She's shit hot famous. But her house just looked like a house.
Yeah.
And
she had a single mom, right?
Yeah. Her dad was in the picture, but didn't live with them. I mean, as she said, she always knew that he loved her. Yes. Even though he wasn't always a presence.
Yes.
But, Mom was a caterer, so Mom's in the kitchen cooking meatballs, and there's all these kids running around the house, and then you slow it down and you realize, oh, look.
Famous kids.
There's Sarah Gilbert and Balthazar Getty and...
God, all of them.
Everybody, Sean Astin.
And everybody, Mark Paul Gosselaar.
Yes.
And just...
Oh
my
Leonardo
God.
DiCaprio.
Yeah.
You just see all these famous people and go, what? And they all loved her house. They all loved hanging out at her house because it was just this warm, welcoming.
It was very normal. It was very welcoming.
There was always food, and it was very, at that point in time, it was all very innocent. It was all very just the kids hanging out there and playing on the beach. And
then you go to her 90s and my 90s. I looked it up. So Soleil Moon Frye is about a year older than I am. So we were the same age. I was watching Punky Brewster when I was about the same age as Punky Brewster. But then, yes, then there was the drinking and the parties and the stuff. And I was like, I was doing the exact same thing she is, but not with famous people.
And what surprised me was when she was, 13? 12 or 13, she developed into...
To almost, she said she was spilling over into an E.
Yeah, she went past a double D. Mm-hmm. And she was like, it was like you would just wake up and you would have outgrown your bra. And
everybody had to comment on it. Like, they show her on, what was the drawing show? Pictionary or whatever.
Yes.
And the guy, well, you've grown. And she was like, and of course, every time they said that, it meant my boobs. But she couldn't get roles unless they were TNA roles. So she went from being Punky Brewster to being whoever they needed a boob shot of.
Yeah, and she was still only 14.
Yes.
And she went through breast reduction surgery.
At 14 or 15, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And she filmed, afterwards, you see the bruising through the bandages. Horrible. But, yeah, she covered everything.
But you know what it made me think of? Kind of a good memory, but a sad thing. It reminded me of a friend of ours, Ron Cree, who is unfortunately no longer with us, because whenever you went out to lunch with Ron, first of all, you never went anywhere with just two people. There was always, you never knew who he was going to have run into and said, hey, meet us for lunch. But he always took a picture. It didn't matter if it was, you were just meeting to grab a burger or a cup of coffee. He took pictures every time he was with his friends. And he also supported all of it. If you had something going on, if you had a book signing,
he was there.
He was there. He wanted to be first in line, wanted a signed copy.
Yeah. Well, the second to last time I saw him was when my first book came out. And he came to my launch and signing. And then we went to his birthday
party.
Yeah. And then he died very suddenly. So,
yes.
But, yeah, and that's the thing is, I still keep that account. I have started going through and unfriending dead people. Unfortunately, there were a surprising number of them this year on my Facebook feed of authors that died. So I went through and removed them, but I keep him because the pictures pop up.
Yes.
All the time.
Same thing.
And I'm like, oh, there I am. But yeah, it was that kind of community thing with her. I was amused by her. She dated Charlie Sheen.
That was hilarious.
Every time he called, this is Charles. And I will say for anybody out there that he was a very good experience for her. And she's still, even reading through her journal, had a big smile when she was talking about him. And it seems like he was very good to her, even though he was her first. So that was nice because I always had a thing. I just thought it was funny. So near the beginning, she records herself and she goes, oh, Johnny Depp, is so gorgeous. And Charlie Sheen is so gorgeous. I'm going to date one of them. One of them is going to be my love. And she ends up dating Charlie, not Johnny Depp. But I was like, damn, that's what I wanted when I was her age, too. That's not fair.
Who didn't want to date Johnny Depp?
Johnny Depp, Keanu Reeves, Charlie Sheen. I was into a certain type of guy. So, but yeah, that was fun. Just who gets to say that and do that?
Yeah, so it's a documentary, and I did feel there were some, for me, the ending.
Also Hulu, right?
Yes.
I always try and say where it was so people can find it.
Yes. At the end, I wanted a little bit more wrap up of where she was now.
Yeah, because it really didn't go into, what did she do with her life?
What happened to her parents? What happened to her brother, who she was so close with?
Yeah.
Who did a lot of the filming.
Yeah.
Because obviously she's not filming herself in all. I mean, sometimes she is.
But no.
That's what I want. And her kids. I just wanted a little bit more of, and here's where I am now.
Yeah. So it seems like she still, in her own way, was a very private person. She was willing to share now at her age. So in her 40s, she'd be about 44 now. That her younger years, right? Because she's moved past them, but she obviously was not ready. It's a good way to kind of sidestep that whole, since she's got a show out.
Yeah.
Well, here, let me tell you about my past, which you care about because you were watching me.
The thing that was really sad was at the end when she posted all the people who were gone.
Yeah.
Who I think they had they all committed suicide?
No, I don't think so.
But
most of them had. Actors and the two guys from Kids, so that was the other interesting thing. She goes to New York. It seemed like she'd kind of left behind the acting thing at that point because she said even after breast reduction, she still couldn't get taken seriously.
Right, she was still studying.
Yeah, acting, but then she went to college in New York, and she ends up meeting the people who were in the documentary Kids, which was a big deal at the time. Right after they had recorded it, or I don't know if they'd aired it or whatever, and she just thought they were great because she used to watch them skateboard, and that's how she ended up meeting them. And she just seemed like she was the type of person, she was so open and free then, that she could meet whoever she wanted. These were a completely different group of people from actors, and she got brought into their little crowd. So
yep, and they all came and hung out at her apartment.
it's definitely interesting to watch, especially if you ever watched Punky Brewster, but also if you were a teen in the 90s, because you get to watch yourself, basically, and all the stupid shit you were doing. But those parties are so familiar, little house parties that you went to, because you couldn't legally drink, so you were all getting whatever liquor you could at people's houses and pot, and she did all that stuff.
What I thought was really an interesting feature that they did, so all these people that she knew, and some of them she's still very close to, but she would have them come in to be, who's the guy who was married to Monica on Friends?
Oh my God.
David Arquette.
Oh, okay.
Courtney Cox.
That's right. He was in there too.
So they would come in and sit down to be interviewed, and I think she told them what she was doing, but she played these messages for them or read things to them from her journal that she hadn't told them in advance. She didn't let them listen to it.
I had a crush on you.
And people were just like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you remember that," or "Oh yeah, that did happen that way."
Oh yeah, playing their voices to them or their messages or.
Who the hell keeps all those?
I don't know, man.
She
pulls out like a tub of journals.
Yes,
I had 3 journals that I'd done in composition books that I recently tossed. So I was like, I'm not going to keep reading this. This isn't good for me. Nobody needs to find these.
And you should burn them.
I burned a bunch of old letters at one point, but I don't have anything to burn them in now.
Oh.
Everything's gas or pellet or...
You can't burn them in the pellet stove?
I don't think so.
You have a cabin with a wood stove.
Well, yeah. I threw these away before that. Jeez.
Ugh. Well, now you have to symbolically burn something.
All right.
Please don't let it be me.
I mean, we discussed this.
We do need to do a shout out to Veronica, because I finally...
You have to say both her names when you do shout out.
Veronica Callisto.
Okay.
Because she's been recommending the movie Drop Dead Gorgeous to me forever, and it is freaking impossible to find unless you are friends with Shannon.
Right, because I had it on DVD.
So it's a twisty, it's really funny, but it's twisty funny.
We'll sell some books for Veronica. Maybe you just need to know Sparkle Tits. Now look up Veronica.
Yes.
Is it Roland? It's Callisto on her publications, right?
I think so.
So anyway,
we'll check that out.
She has a superhero, and that superhero is Sparkle Tits.
Yes, but this movie is just, God damn, it's funny. Kirstie Alley is in it. Ellen Barkin. Mm-hmm. I was rolling on the floor with Ellen Barkin.
She was so trashy.
Yes, Kirsten Dunst and Denise Richards. And my other very, very, very favorite actress. Oh my God, and I'm going to blank on her name. She's on Mom.
Oh, yeah, the tall lady.
Yeah, I know her. I love her. I'm like, why isn't her name on here? So I can just easily...
The mom on Mom.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
She plays Ellen Barkin's best friend. Oh my God, she is hilarious. And her hair.
It's always hilarious,
her
but
hair
yeah.
And the Minnesota accents. So it's a beauty pageant in this little town to determine what girl will go on to represent the town at the state Miss Minnesota pageant. And there's murder.
There is mayhem. There's everything.
A lot of mayhem.
They're exploding trailer homes.
Oh, and what is the little... Oh, Amy Adams is in it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she's just a horny little teenager.
There's a laundry list of people in that movie, but it's funny. I haven't watched it in a while. I just remember Kirsten Dunst doing her little, what is it, tap dancing down the road or whatever.
Yes. I like it when she's doing it in the funeral parlor.
Yes. Well, because she does their makeup.
She has a part-time job at the funeral parlor.
Speaking of old things, I started watching just to have it running in the background, something familiar, Malcolm in the Middle again.
Ooh.
Did you ever watch that show?
I did.
It's so weird. I had a hard time adjusting from the dad on that, and then Breaking Bad, right? And now I have to adjust back to him being the goofy dad.
Yep.
But oh my God, that show is still so funny. And I wasn't a parent when I watched it the first time. And those kids are so tiny.
Yes.
I forgot how tiny they were when it started, how young,
yes.
What is it? Frankie Muniz. It was, and he's so tiny and cute.
And his little brother. Oh yeah.
But as the mom, now I identified with it because I had 4 younger siblings first time, so it wasn't. And our house then was way more like the show than my house now because my kids are pretty quiet.
Yes.
There's not 3 boys.
Kasmeric is the mom.
Yeah, sure. I'm not even see look at me. I didn't even try and throw out any names. I said the dude from Breaking Bad, and I did say
Cranston.
Frankie. Yes.
See, we do have a brain cellar too.
We trade it back and forth.
Yeah.
Whoever needs it more that week.
And sometimes we drop it. It picks up little dust off the floor. At my house, it picks up.
We're
a
like,
lot
hey,
of
do
cat
you know
hair.
where it went? No, I don't know.
Hey, have you? You probably haven't because you don't watch network TV. The new Walker.
Texas Ranger with
Yes, with Jared Padalecki.
I have not. Is it good?
Kind of like it.
He appears to look quite pleasant in cowboy
gear.
You
know, he does, and there's a lot of really attractive people on the show, so I got no complaints.
In cowboy gear?
Yeah.
My God, I need to watch it.
Yes, you do.
That's my thing.
Mitch Pileggi is on it.
Oh wow, he's in when you watch older movies, he's in so many movies he shows up everywhere. And the first I discovered him was X-Files, right?
Exactly.
By then he'd been in a billion. He's also in like a horror movie called Shocker or something like that.
He was also on Supernatural. He had a recurring role on Supernatural. But yeah, let me tell you, he's still in great shape.
He's a big guy.
He is.
Yeah. So I guess I never noticed he was in shape to begin with. Actually, maybe on that one where he's a killer, he is.
Walker's boss is played by the guy who was the young punk on Burn Notice. Can't remember his name.
The young punk? Like the young main punk?
No, not Michael.
Okay.
And not Bruce Campbell, but the third guy who came in the later seasons.
I don't even remember. I've been wanting to watch that and Psych and Monk again.
Oh, those would all be good things to watch.
I know, but I'm watching Malcolm in the Middle right now.
I do not blame you at all.
Did you read anything this week?
Nope.
That's weird.
Actually,
are you well?
Actually, I read more Pratchett, but I talked about it last time.
That's right.
And I've got a book I don't want to talk about until I finish, and the form is unusual. So it's taking me longer to get through it than normal.
All right. I have like 2 short story books going right now, so that it'll be forever before I can even bother mentioning. But I did read a short story by Deanna Knipling, and it's Drink Me, and it's I don't know how to say it, Tenebrosities series that she does. She has great plays on Alice in Wonderland and things inherent to Alice in Wonderland if you look up her books. So, and then I did finally finish one book of short stories that was mysteries, and I finally have the title because I mentioned I was reading it, but I didn't. So it's The Last Seance.
Oh.
And it might be The Last Seance and Other Stories. It's short stories by Agatha Christie.
Oh.
And so they're not always mysteries. And I don't know. There's some good stuff in there. So I finally finished that one, and I'm going to have to go and read another novel now.
Yes, I will have to step up my reading. I've really let it slide.
The only time I get to read at this point is before bed, and that's depending upon how late I went to go to bed. That's not that long.
Yep.
So like I was getting 10% a night on my Kindle on the book of short stories I was reading. So that was 10. But I was reading other stuff in between.
And you're like, I can't keep my eyes open any longer.
Right.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
I shall begin.
Jump in. Jump.
Okay. So to kick off the new season, my piece of the episode is called Dangerous Delivery.
She titled it for you.
I was right pleased with myself for that. Right pleased. So I got some of this. My sources include businessinsider.com, the Wichita Eagle, a Wichita television station, the Washington Post, Murderpedia. I don't know if I went to Wikipedia for this one. The postandcourier.com. I think I must have and just not noted it down. So these are some really, really unfortunate pizza delivery experiences. I make it sound funny. They are totally not. These are all heinous murders. So, and here I am giggling.
And then we laugh.
Well, we're sick and twisted. So, July 4th, 1982.
Oh, it's not in 1905?
No, there are no hatchets involved.
Or typhoid even.
Or typhoid.
Hopefully.
So, a caller to Domino's Pizza in Salem, Oregon, orders 3 large pizzas and asks for the woman in the orange VW to deliver them, because she's delivered to me before, so she knows where I live.
Are you talking about the dude that came after my mom?
I don't know. I don't think so. The woman was off, so 18...
Yeah, you're talking about the dude that came after my mom.
Am I really?
What's the name?
Is his last name Smith?
Yeah.
Oh, yep,
Scotty.
that's him. So
Yeah.
I'm doing... Oh, my God. I didn't even connect it, because I went at it from the
other angle.
From the Domino's angle.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Holy
I just thought that was
shit.
funny. I was like, I know this story.
You do know this story.
Really well.
Okay, so this 18-year-old Sherry Irely drives off to deliver them at 9:30 at night. Mm-hmm. The address doesn't exist, but they find her car. Car is running, headlights on, in an isolated spot by the Willamette River, and a stepped-on stack of pizzas and a Domino's hat. Her body was never found.
Yeah.
Police had no leads.
Because she was in the Willamette.
Yes. And
it's a big river that goes to the ocean.
And they compared it to the Green River Killer. I'll get to that. I'll just follow my notes in the order.
Yeah, do that.
Instead of trying to skip around.
I know, that's harder.
I made you lose your place. You did. I was like, wait, I have a date here, but that's not. So, and it wasn't until 2007 that William Scott Smith pleaded guilty to her murder. He'd already been convicted of 2 other Salem.
Yeah, he was already in prison.
Also young women. He was originally discounted because of alibi information, which they later disproved. He had also killed Terry Monroe in 1981 and Rebecca Darling and Catherine Redmond in 1984. The girls were asphyxiated. 3 were placed in a river, similarity to the Green River Killer. He said Irely was thrown in the river after she was strangled, but the body was never found. So that was...
Little Puddin' and Willamette.
Oh, it's just...
The Willamette's gorgeous, by the way.
Yes.
Despite the bodies that are probably... There's probably more bodies.
Oh, so many in there. But what got me on this was the obviously it's violent, but the fact that it must have been so sudden, because she wasn't the only one whose car was still running. One of the other women, either the car was still running or...
He was a big guy when he was...
Yeah, and he would apparently just snatched him out of the car and boom, gone.
A little extra about that, because I actually talked to my mom about it a bit recently, because I was able to tell her, because she had felt responsible for one of the deaths for a long time because she got away from him and he went and killed somebody else.
Mm.
But I think it was Irely, but she wasn't responsible. He did Irely with a friend.
Yes.
That was pre-planned.
Yes.
They were after a different pizza girl. So I was able to tell her that. But anyway, his big sister, I guess, was mean. She was mean. She got mad at me one time and took all my Barbies. So that's when she knew her. So yeah, and she did pick on her little brother a lot, but she was like, that doesn't make you it should make you a killer. It's not her fault, but yeah.
All right. So that was deadly delivery number 1.
Okay.
So in 2017, on November 25th, a Wichita Pizza Hut delivery driver named Hassan Rahman, I apologize, I don't know how it's pronounced.
That's okay. Mine's Russian.
Okay. 26 years old, an engineering student at WSU, left the store to make 2 deliveries. He's a married man with children, went to make the deliveries, never came back. He was very, very highly thought of in the community. Apparently his coworkers really liked him because when he didn't come back, they went looking for him. And Wichita is not particularly tiny. No. So, and they didn't find him. The next day, his body was found in the trunk of his car. The motive didn't appear to be robbery because there was still cash in his pocket. The 2 deliveries had both been made and didn't appear to be connected in any way to what happened to him. And there was evidence indicated he encountered his killer near the second delivery site before he and his car were moved to another neighborhood about 3 miles away.
Okay.
So, the reason people might have heard about this murder, you might not have heard about his murder, but there was another murder the same night that they believe was connected. In a January 16th, 2018 Wichita Eagle article, the police were saying they believed the murder was linked to the murder of a Vietnamese mother and son that same night. 62-year-old...
Were these like race-based or
hate
crime?
I don't think so.
Okay.
The 62-year-old mom was the owner of a dry cleaning business, and her 23-year-old son, Cody, who worked for her, were discovered dead that same night, also shot in what police said was not a random killing. Ramon's car was found the next morning about 3 blocks away.
Okay.
So, and neither murder weapon was found. Because he was a driver for Pizza Hut offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest.
Oh.
The case is still open. To this day, the case is still open, and it's at a standstill.
How was he killed?
Shot.
Okay.
All
All
three
of them were shot.
Yeah. So, on February 21st of 2019, Wichita police offered a $2,500 reward for information in the deaths of the mother and son. A detective said they'd conducted more than 70 interviews and checked phone records, but still had no motivation for the murder. Which brings me to a separate point of, what the fuck does the number 70 mean? I think the police understand the need to quantify.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think lay people like you and I don't think we have any understanding of how many leads is the right amount to follow up. Should you be following 15 leads? Should you be following 2,500 leads? Is 70 a lot? Is it a little? Is it right in the middle? We don't know, but it gives people something so they can say, aha, I have a number. I can see they're doing something.
Yeah.
That's just my little aside.
Well, because that's the big thing, right? Especially serial killers, but any unsolved crimes, the public gets very restless if the police don't catch that person real fast. But any kind of stranger murder is hard.
Yes.
Because there's nothing to track.
I'm looking all through the Kansas papers and I'm not finding much more information. But there's an article in the Washington Post and I'm thinking, why the fuck is the Washington Post writing about this? Why? It's such a small town thing. There's plenty of murders and intrigue in Washington. They don't need to go far to get some. However, Cody was a gamer and he played with friends around the country, as gamers do. He was playing with friends the night he was killed. They were online, and these people heard the gunshots that killed him and his mother. One of the players stayed on the line and heard Ha's sister come home an hour later and discover the bodies.
Oh my God.
So these people who were playing with him heard this. They didn't hear anything like, hello, my name is John and I'm going to shoot you, but they heard the gunshots. No mention of this was made in the Wichita News, but the Post had all these gamer friends that they interviewed. And apparently they said when they were playing online, they would frequently hear the doorbell in the background. And sometimes Ha would have to get off the game to answer the door. And they said it happened a lot. And he told them people were coming to buy prescription drugs from his mother, which he got a cut of. Mm-hmm. So my assumption is she's a dry cleaner. What is she doing selling prescription drugs out of her home? And no shit, could that be...
Right.
But
what led the...
Yeah. What led to...
Motive.
I know that? No, but it's certainly... Yes, it's a motive. When you're selling prescription drugs to people who you don't know, and you don't know
And you've given them your home address. Yes. That's crazy.
And you don't know what effect these drugs are having on them. You don't know what their mental state is when they're coming to you. And it sounds like the poor pizza guy was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Okay.
So that case is still open. It's unsolved. However, my last one is solved. Yay.
Yay.
So this one happens in 1985. And there's a man named Mitchell Sims. You heard of Mitchell? You're nodding your head. I'm like...
Possibly.
He called himself the human ashtray because he liked to put stub cigarettes out on his bare chest. Mm-hmm. So he had a grudge against Domino's. I'm telling you, it's all the pizza.
We did once get a fly baked into our pizza.
Ew!
Yeah. We wanted to get a new pizza.
Whoa. So he had a grudge against Domino's because he had worked there as a manager until the fall of 1985, and he apparently resigned a management position over a dispute about bonus pay. Some of his bonus got held back, or the bonus structure got changed or something. On December 3rd of 1985, he went to Domino's in Hanahan, South Carolina, which was not the one he had worked at. But he pulled out a handgun. He tied up the two workers who were there with a telephone cord, robbed the safe. He shot Christopher Zur, who was only 24 years old, in the head. Mitchell Sims was only 25, so it's not like... He also shot Gary Melky, who was also 24 years old, 4 times in the head and the neck. He had shell casings in his tongue, the guy that was shot. And then he went home and went to bed.
Well, you know.
So Zur died at the scene, but Melky got loose, drove himself to the police station, staggered in, and was able to name Sims as the shooter before he collapsed. He did die a few days later at the hospital, but he was able twice to identify who shot him. Sims had already hit the road with his girlfriend, 20-year-old Ruby Paget, and they had relocated to Glendale, California. So this happened on December 3rd, remember. On December 10th, he's still hungry, and he's still angry at Domino's. They ordered a Domino's pizza to be delivered to their hotel room. So the delivery man, John Harrigan, delivers the pizza. They strip him, gag him, tie him up, stuff him in the bathtub. Then, because they've stripped him, Sims put on the delivery man's outfit. He and Paget steal Harrigan's truck, and they drive back to the Domino's shop where he works. After tying up the 2 employees, because he was wearing Dom's uniform, he actually interacted with customers. He answered the phone, he took orders, as though everything was normal. And what happened was, an off-duty employee of that shop came in, and apparently one of the managers was still out there working, and the manager acted as if he didn't know him. So the guy thought something was going on, and he called the police.
Good.
Yeah. So if you think something fucked up is going on, call the police. Just make that call. So the 2 employees were forced into a walk-in refrigerator, and he tied them with their hands behind their back, looped up into a noose around their neck, looped over the shelving, so they had to stand on their tiptoes to keep from strangling in the walk-in cooler. And they were able to get free. The police were able to free them. One of them had lost consciousness, but they were okay. But Paget and Sims were already on their way to Las Vegas. The stolen truck was found in a casino parking lot on December 21st. And the resulting publicity, once they found that truck, they started flashing their pictures all over the media, resulted in their arrest on Christmas morning. It turns out an unemployed iron worker had met them somewhere and liked them, took them home for drinks, and then later saw the photos on the news after they found the truck. So he promptly turned them in for the reward.
Oh, yeah.
Merry fucking Christmas.
He didn't like them that much.
No.
Good.
So Sims was convicted of Harrigan's murder in 1987 and sentenced to death. Paget was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. This is where the story gets really fucking... Yeah, it's already weird, but here's where it gets bureaucratically weird. There was talk of extradition back to South Carolina because it would have been a faster trial, would have been a shorter amount of time, evidence would have been fresh, and they believed there was a better possibility of getting a death sentence in South Carolina. But the governor and the DA somehow got in a pissing contest over who had the right to agree to extradition. And it appears that a third party was trying to make this a big deal, like this was a big controversy. And they were like, well, we kind of were just doing business as we usually do. Mm-hmm. But they tried him in California and did get the death sentence. They eventually did try him in South Carolina. He was convicted of armed robbery and 2 counts of murder, and he did receive more death sentences.
Okay.
He is still on death row. His appeals have all been exhausted.
Good.
But he's not dead yet. And here's the thing. What?
Did he end up killing anybody? Did he kill anybody? Remind me.
Yes, he
Remind me of the story you just told me. So he did kill them.
He did kill the 2 people in South Carolina and the guy, the delivery driver. In California. Here's the thing. The defense attorney in LA at that trial tried to make the case that Harrigan, the one who was killed, could have accidentally drowned while trying to escape the bathtub. But here's the thing. He'd left in the tub on his side, his ankles and his hands bound together behind his back. It's called hogtie. Mm-hmm. His mouth was stuffed with a washcloth. There was a pillowcase over his head and tied around his neck. And his head was under the running tap.
Yeah, that's called water torture.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, they certainly didn't mean to kill him, leaving him like that. So yeah, this is the weird thing. His appeals have been exhausted, but now there's a thing going on in California about what is the constitutionally legal way to kill people.
Yeah, always California.
So the girlfriend, Paget, is still in jail, and he has been on death row since, what did I say? Whoops, wrong page. 85? 85 was when he did it. It took him a couple of years. 87. He's been on death row since 1987, so 20.
It might as well just be life.
Yeah.
It's so expensive either way.
And they had to go through a whole bunch of legal finagling because there was something to do with his Miranda rights, because he started talking, then he suddenly wanted a lawyer, or he didn't want to talk, and then he started talking again. They're like, well, if he says he wants a lawyer, you can't talk to him until he gets a lawyer. That was thrown out because they said it wouldn't matter. If they threw out what he said, the evidence was still overwhelming.
Okay. Good. It wasn't just circumstantial. It was.
Oh, God, no. I mean, he said the comment that they wanted to throw out was, he said something like, yeah, I had to kill that guy.
All right.
Well, yeah, because
you said it.
Oh my God. But yeah, so apparently I'm oddly into weird food related crime.
That's what my son wants to do. Sliver pizza. My husband did it for a while.
And I know, well, and Nikki drove for Jimmy John's.
Yep.
So she did not enjoy it, but she was determined to save money for a car, and she did.
I watched a whole conversation drama, 2 sets of conversations on the Culinary Distancing Colorado Springs Facebook page, where, I go to find new restaurants, not to watch people fight, but sometimes people fight, and then I just watch that shit because it's not my drama. So first somebody posted, "Dear delivery drivers, if you could not leave the food directly in front of the screen doors so we can't open it without knocking the food over."
That's valid. I feel like that's valid.
Well, a delivery person for like Grubhub or one of the places, he purposely didn't say where, but that type of delivery place,
right,
took it personally, and he responded in that thread. Then he started his own thread and then he made a comment about passive aggressive, and I was like, it wasn't passive aggressive. I mean, she straight up said it. I think people have started blurring what passive aggressive means. But anyway, so he goes off and he does a very aggressive post about what people need to know about delivery drivers. The problem is, it was legitimate problems, because it's not great, because people suck and they don't tip you much, if any. But he was such an ass about the post that I was like, man, if I actually ordered this shit, I would, but I don't. We go and get our own stuff.
Yeah, you just lost all your sympathy.
But, and it was like, please tip at least $5. If you're getting any sort of delivery, it should be a minimum of $5 tip, because that's the only money we make off of those services. The services get the percentage they charge.
They do.
They're not paying those. No, and that's why I was like, I'm going to bring it up. The delivery people are not getting those surcharges.
No.
And by the way, having worked at a restaurant, your servers we weren't getting tipped. If somebody did a Grubhub thing, servers didn't get tipped either. So we had to do the work, but we didn't get tipped. And any tip went to the driver. So all in all, these services are not great. But
that reminds me. I'm going to segue again, but it's still related to pizza.
Okay.
There was I will not name it. There's a new pizza place near us.
Yeah.
And so I said to Joe, let's go pick up pizza for dinner. Okay, because we had to run another errand. Okay. So I I said, oh, look, they've got an online ordering system. So I go in, place the order. I order 2 salads and one of their standard pizzas. No special order, nothing. Just regular pizza. So I get there at the time, and they emailed me back and said, here's when your order will be ready. It's about half an hour, so I'm like, perfect. So we get there and we go in, and the young man behind the counter, when I say, I placed an online order, looks at me as though I am speaking Urdu or something similar. And he was just like, you did what? I said, the online ordering system. He goes, well, what's your name? And hold on. He comes back and he goes, it'll be about 10 minutes. Okay. So we go sit down at the end of the counter because we can wait 10 minutes. Really, I'm a terribly impatient person, but I can wait 10 minutes. So, 20 minutes later, a guy comes by and he stops, one of the employees, and he stops and he looks at us and he goes, you guys have been here a while. And I said, yes, we have. Very pleasantly, I'm not angry. I said, yes, we have. And he said, what did you order? And I said, we placed an online order and here's the name. So he goes back in the kitchen and comes back and goes, it'll be 5 minutes. Okay. So 10 minutes later, the guy from the kitchen, another guy, the third guy from the kitchen comes out and kind of shoves the pizza at it and goes, let me get your salads. And I left and I was like, I'm not going back. I said, because nobody at any point said, even offered us a glass of water, said, I'm so sorry.
Sorry for the wait. There was a mix up.
Yeah. Oh my God. We're working the bugs out of the, if they had in any way acknowledged that that there was a problem, I would have been completely happy, but there was nothing. They could have said, oh, you know what? Because you had to wait, we threw a cannoli in.
Right.
Or do you want a fountain drink while you're waiting? Nothing. Not even a sorry. And I was just like, fuckers, it'll be a cold day in hell before I will come back here. But here was the kicker. The next day, I emailed them and told them what happened. And I said, I decided instead of making a public review of your restaurant on Google,
I would attempt to contact you.
I would attempt to contact you.
Which is what they ask people to do on that culinary distancing page. If you contact us so we can work it out instead of just blasting us.
That was Wednesday night. This is Sunday. Heard Zippo from them.
I was disappointed in Josh and John's because I watched the employees deal with a really awful customer one day. And I wrote in about the employees, never heard a word back. And I'm like,
how long does it take to say
I just complimented
thanks?
your fucking employees, which nobody ever does, let me tell you. And
yeah, I know.
The least you could do is contact me back. It's not like I wanted to get anything free, but I would like to know that my email was received and that perhaps it will be reflected on an employee review that a customer said that they were excellent, considering the person was awful and I almost stabbed him in the face as a customer. And it was teenagers dealing with him and they did so well. Yeah. So, and I did say the name of that business because everybody always, they got recommended on a bunch of stuff on that page. And I'm like, we were walking past the one downtown one time, same restaurant or same ice cream place. Too bad they have good ice cream, but
I know. It's so good.
Somebody literally saw us walking, looking at the door and ran over and turned off the light a few minutes before closing time. And I was like, okay.
Oh, that would piss me off. I mean, I understand their mentality. I totally get it, but
I was the closer at the restaurant. I get it, but
if somebody comes in 2 minutes before closing and needs to shop at the shop, we're like, all right, I can't give you unlimited time, but I will stay open. I'm going to turn off the light.
The funny thing is we weren't going there. We were just walking back from a show, but I was like, ooh, the audacity. Now I want to go try and go there. Because now I want to be a jerk like you.
And I want to order a milkshake.
Right? I'm just going to annoy you as much as I can. I would like you to freshly bake me a waffle bowl, bitches. But yes, that conversation was interesting to follow. And then there were anybody who was like, your tone isn't great, but I understand why you're upset. And I thank you for educating me. They got ripped apart by him and several other people. No matter how polite they were about it, if somebody was not dead straight agreeing with this dude and his, I don't know, strange feral followers, then they were getting yelled at for being assholes and not tipping well enough. And they were like, I tip very well. I was just saying that, Stop.
And I think Grubhub does not pay its drivers well.
They don't. All they make is tips.
Yeah.
So they don't get paid at all. They get their tips.
I didn't realize they didn't get paid at all.
That's what he said. He said we rely on the tips. That's what we make. Just so you know, that's all we make. The rest goes to Grubhub so they can make their money.
I would suggest he find other employment.
So somebody said that and they got ripped apart.
I'm just thinking, why are you working for a company that doesn't even pay you?
He said he makes $40 an hour. And I was like, okay, so your complaint is you're not being tipped well enough, but you're making $40 an hour. Make up your mind. It was a whole thing. And then anybody who had a problem with him was elitist and entitled. And it was just fascinating. So, but anyway, I do think it's important to point out that they're not making money and that you absolutely should fucking well be tipping. And by the way, if you order something for somebody else to pick up for you and it's during a snowstorm or some adverse time like that, you should sure as hell be tipping extra.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was another thing. He's like, he actually took a screenshot of his pay of the screen that comes up for whatever company with the amount of tips. And it was like $1.74, just round up to the next dollar. So
if you can afford to order out, you can afford to tip. And that's the point.
That's the same thing. If you go to a restaurant, you can damn well afford to tip. And there's a lot of people that don't do that either. So,
and if you can't tip, stay the fuck to home.
Right. And I mean, that was the point he was making, but aggressively. And I'm like, here's the thing. I'm tired of I've had my share of rants. You're not going to change anybody's mind by being nasty. Just like with politics, when you start saying everybody who votes for a certain person has to be racist, for example,
yes.
Well, you've just turned away anybody who doesn't feel that they are that person from listening to your words. There's medium ways. You can be angry. I'm angry all the time. I am the hope. But anyway.
You're not big and green.
That would probably be better for people because then they'd see that visual sign that they were about to die.
I think you have plenty of visual signs.
I do, actually.
I don't think not everyone is attuned to them.
I was first, romance author Cameron Clare coming across the room after during a dawn conference thing and saying, I can see how tense you are over here because I was angry about the person who brought a child and the child was being awful. She was like, you're stressing me out from across the room. You're so bad.
I went back and yelled at her.
I had multiple times talked to the mother.
Ugh. I think I went back and yelled at the kid, knock it the fuck off.
Right? Like if your mom's not going to do anything,
if
we're
your
at a public event. Oh my gosh. But yes, so there are visual signs. But I do not turn green, which would, for those who can't take a hint, perhaps help them.
Perhaps.
Maybe not. Probably. Usually not.
So what are you going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about the mystery unsolved of Dyatlov Pass.
Yes.
Now, I've been saying it wrong. I've been saying Dyatlov, and I went and I listened to a video yesterday because I wanted to know. My father was basically fluent in Russian. Doesn't mean any of that shit rubbed off of me because it's not like he was talking Russian to us. He did sometimes say, "Sidis, molchach," and I don't know what it means, but it probably means sit down, shut up, or sit down, you idiot.
Something
and
along
he would
those
answer
lines.
the phone, "Vasnichya." But that's really the extent of my Russian. So apologies. That's what happens when your dad's NSA during the Cold War. He is fluent in Russian. Anyway, I got my information from SmithsonianMag.com, Wikipedia, and DyatlovPass.com. That's the only name I'm going to say right, by the way, because that's the one I heard. In February 1959, a group of experienced hikers went up into the Ural Mountains in Russia and died horribly. Why and how they died is a quite popular mystery. I loves it. Okay. Rescue workers who went up found the bodies scattered over quite a distance, all with varying injuries. It was found they'd cut their way out of their tent, one single slit with a knife, and walked into the nighttime wilderness in freezing temperatures while underdressed sometime on the night or morning of the 1st or 2nd of February. Most had died from hypothermia, but 3 had suffered serious physical injuries that led to internal hemorrhaging and death.
Ugh.
Igor Dyatlov was in charge of the expedition, with 9 others joining him, all from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. They were all grade 2 hikers. This expedition would allow them to get their grade 3 certification when they got back. It was something like 300 kilometers.
Okay.
It was a ski trip, and it would allow them to get that grade 3. That was the highest it could go at that time in the Soviet Union. So these, in other words, these were experienced hikers, campers, skiers. Okay, they had done this. They had gotten to their grade 2 where you had to have a certain number of kilometers under your belt to get that. They were planning on hiking to Otorten, which was a mountain in Sverdlovsk Oblast.
They make the best face when you're saying Russian names. It's like you have to... It's like
I feel like I'm going to slip into some terrible fake Russian accent because it's fun to do, and then I'll just... There's no going back. They would ultimately make it just shy of 10 kilometers of their goal.
Okay.
The hikers were 2 women, Lyudmila Dubinina and Zeneda Komogorova, and 8 men, the leader, Igor Dyatlov, Yuri Durashenko, Yuri Krivonishenko, 2 different people. Yuri is short for things. Alexander Kolovatov, Rustem Slobodin, Nikolai Thibaut Brignol, it looks French, I don't know, Simeon Zolotaryov, who by the way was the oldest, he was 38, he was a veteran of a war, and Yuri Yudin, all between the ages of 20 and 38. They were all actually in their 20s except for Zolotaryov. They started out on January 27th, but Yuri Yudin had to turn back the next day due to knee and joint pain. He actually had a lot of health issues, and that left 9 people going out. A snowstorm hit, causing them to get sidetracked from their original direction due to low visibility. They camped near the top of Kholat Syaki on a steep slope, though less than a mile downhill, they would have been able to camp in the woods. So one of the hikers had journaled they figured Dyatlov wanted to practice camping on a slope, or that he wasn't willing to lose that 1.5 kilometers of altitude, so that he hadn't said why he decided to camp on this slope. It actually wasn't a terribly steep slope comparatively. It was a good enough one to camp on.
Okay.
From experienced campers. Either way, it was a decision they'd all end up paying for. When there was no word from the hikers by February 20th, again, they'd started out January 27th, their relatives became worried, restless.
Yeah, right.
It was well past when they should have been back. Initially, their projected date of return was February 12th, though Dyatlov had said it might run a bit past that. Responding to the relatives' demands, the university gathered student and teacher volunteers. That's who went to search for them first, by the way, just students and teachers. And when they were still searching for them, then they end up bringing in the militia, an army. And the army brought in air support, so they were looking with choppers and planes. A student named Mikhail Sharavin found the tent torn and buried beneath some snow. Now, when I say buried, and I will post a picture of it, you can see that the tent poles on either end are still standing. This is a large 9-person, like triangular type tent. And so they're still standing. And there's a little snow over the center of it that's crushed it down. Okay. So that was 26th of February. Inside the tent were their belongings, including some of their clothing, coats, and shoes. Footprints led the searchers to the woods. Then that was the woods 1.5 kilometers away. And now I'm going to switch to feet. For the rest of these. The woods were slightly less than a mile from the tent. So 1.5 kilometers was about 0.98 mile. Okay. That's where the first 2 bodies were found. That was Doroshenko and Krivonishenko. They were wearing some light clothing. In fact, it was basically their like nightshirts over long pajamas. So they were in their sleep clothes. And like one of them had 1 sock on that was torn. One of them had 2 wool socks. The one had torn cotton sock. The other one was burned by the fire. Very underdressed, obviously. They were beneath a tree. I think it was a cedar. And the branches on this tree, there had been a fire built. There was a successful fire built that had burned there. The branches on the tree had been broken off up to about 5 meters high, which made it look like someone had climbed the tree. They thought possibly like trying to find their tent again, to maybe go back to it. And then a bunch of like little mini fir trees, they said, had been cut down around it, and those are what had been used for the fire, it seems. So green wood wasn't great, but that's what they had. Everything else was buried under snow. They're on a mountain. So it said that the fire had burned for about 90 minutes, and they were able to tell that from the wood not being all the way burned through. They could tell about how long this wood would have burned. So they think that it only burned 90 minutes. Doroshenko had pulmonary contusion and edema, thought to be from blunt force trauma, as well as burns on his foot and temple, a swollen lip, blood on his ears, nose, and lips, and various other contusions and abrasions around his body. Their hands, a lot of them, their hands were really screwed up, and I was thinking, from the getting branches and climbing a tree, but it was the backs of their hands, on their knuckles, between their fingers, which didn't so much mesh with that. And a lot of them had cuts on their hands, but backs their knuckles and bruising. So, Krivonishenko had bitten off a portion of his knuckle, and that flesh was still found in his mouth when they found the body. So they don't know if he's trying to keep himself awake, if it was something where he clamped down because hypothermia, right? Both of these men are said to have died from hypothermia. He had third-degree burns on his leg and foot, and there were several of them that had burns on, say, hands, I assume, from the fire. Maybe they were, because a lot of them had frostbite, they couldn't feel it. There was somebody whose pant leg had obviously burned, so maybe it caught on fire. There were burns on feet, obviously from putting their extremities near the fire. Anyway, so he had third-degree burns on his leg and foot. His nose was missing, but there was no blood, so they thought it had happened post-mortem, probably an animal.
Oh.
Like Doroshenko, he had bruises and cuts all over his body. He was wearing one torn sock, the other was burned by the fire. Like I said, there were various articles of clothing scattered around the fire. There were strips of clothing because they had been cutting them off. Liver mortis showed that they had been moved after death. So they figured that other hikers had, after these two died of exposure, of the hypothermia, they were laid neatly side by side.
Okay.
And one of them had liver mortis on his back, but he was on his front.
So a respectful thing.
Yes. It was not somebody brutalized these bodies. And there were 3 of the bodies that showed liver mortis that didn't match their positions, showing them that they felt that they had been moved. Okay. Retracing their steps back to the tent, the rescuers eventually found 3 more bodies at distances of 980 feet, 1,570 feet, and 2,070 feet from the tree. These people are trying to get back to the tent. And they basically died of hypothermia on the way there.
Okay.
These were the bodies of Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin, and it appeared they'd been trying to make their way back to the tent when they died of hypothermia. Dyatlov was found to have been vomiting blood. He had on a jacket, but it was unbuttoned. It was open. And they were like, this is strange.
Why was he vomiting blood?
I don't know. He didn't have the bruises the other 2 men showed. Those first 2 men at the fire, it was a lot of big bruises on arms and torsos and legs. So, because some of the theories that there was some sort of fight, but that doesn't bear out. There's not fight tracks, footprints.
Okay.
Yeah, but the injuries on back of hands, on knuckles and stuff. Anyway. He did have some cuts around his feet and ankles, but he was not one of the ones wearing shoes. There were only 2 that had shoes on. And all this, so they're doing this in socks, negative 40 degrees. Kolmogorova had a large bruise on her waist, and it was big. It's on the side, and they said it looked like it would have been made by a baton. And so I was thinking, well, tree branch, we know that they had a bunch of tree branches down, and they were used for more later. She also had abrasions and bruises on her face and her hands. She had on more clothing than some. The 3 that were found on the way up to the tent had on some more clothing. They had on other people's clothing because Yudin, who had gone home, he was able to say this was such and such's jacket.
Oh,
this was,
right.
Yes. So they did have information like that. Ultimately, what it came down to is they think the 2 men were just in their long underwear at the fire because they were going to stay by the fire to keep it burning. And then the 3 were going to try and get to the tent, so they borrowed items of clothing.
Okay.
So there were scattered items of clothing among them. And then there were also 4 others, right?
Yeah, right. We're the 4 others.
And we'll get to them in a moment, they're in what we call the den. Okay.
The den.
Or around the den. So there was a fully different death. And they had the most clothes probably of everybody, were 3 of those. Okay. His body was found with something called an ice bed under him, meaning when he collapsed, because his official cause of death is hypothermia. However, this ice bed indicates he still had body heat when he fell and did not get back up. And it melted the snow underneath him and then refroze into this ice bed. He did have a head injury. It was a crack on the frontal bone of his skin, like a fracture or a skull. And it was said by a forensic investigator that was the type of thing that had to have occurred because of blunt force trauma. But it did not kill him. His official cause of death is listed as hypothermia. Oh my God. It wouldn't be until May 4th that they found the last 4 hikers. But, again, we're in the mountains.
Altitude, snow.
These were found by a Mansi native and his dog. The Mansi are the indigenous people in the area. Mm-hmm. The bodies had been beneath 13 feet of snow. They had searched and tried to do like some sort of ultrasound or, something to get under there, and they couldn't find anything, but it was 13 feet of snow. They were in a ravine, and it was less than 300 feet from the tree under which those first two were found where the fire was. So what they'd done, they had more clothing, like I'd said before, but some of it was like they'd cut it off of a body, for example, and wrapped the rags. Okay. One of the woman who was with them, she had cut one of her own sweaters in half and tied the strips around one foot, and the other strip was on the ground, so she didn't finish.
Wow.
Okay, so they were trying whatever they could do to keep themselves alive.
Yeah.
In that weather.
Damn.
So in the cedar branches that were down, they had been cut, by the way, and they couldn't find a knife. They didn't find a knife that seemed big enough to cut off these branches. This is one of the mysteries. One of them, maybe it was Dyatlov, he had a penknife on him. But that was it.
No. I love me my Swiss Army knife, but no.
Yeah.
It's not going to cut a tree branch off.
So they have the branches. They've built some sort of den, which is why they call it the den, which they believe that the ex-military guy, because it was something they'd done on the front.
Ah, okay.
Before that, he would have probably shown them how to do it. He would have been the one who knew how to do it. They'd use the cedar branches for that. There were also cedar branches on the ground, obviously them trying to be able to lie down and separate themselves from the snow.
From the freeze, which would leach the heat out of them.
Mm-hmm. There was running water by that time, the drainage from all that snow melt. And so they were missing soft tissue when they found these ones, because they found them in this basic river of drainage. So
in the spring and
soft tissues from their face were missing because that was exposed. Everything else was under clothing of some sort. And it is felt that it was because of the moisture. One big thing that stands out, I guess I'll talk about that here in a second, but the woman's tongue had been ripped out. Her tongue was gone. So
could that have been predation?
It could have been predation, but I'm going to talk to you about why people say it wasn't.
Okay.
So Dubinina is that woman. Her sweater tested positive for radioactivity, so that comes back to some of the theories later. Her eyes were missing, as were her lips and tongue and a portion of her cheek. Her nose had been broken. Aside from any broken ribs, she had a bunch of broken ribs on both sides. Oh. By the way, it was on both sides, because that matters later. There was a hemorrhage in the right atrium of her heart, so the internal bleeding is what killed her, ultimately, not hypothermia. There was a dark brown mucosal mass, that's in quotes, in her stomach, which leads to the theory that her tongue was ripped out while the heart was still pumping blood in order for her to be able to have swallowed that. Zolotaryov, which he's the ex-military, was well-dressed. He was wearing a camera, and unfortunately, the film... That means when they left that tent, he grabbed his camera. There were 4 other cameras that they had. Nobody else grabbed them. He grabbed his camera, but the water had destroyed the film. They were never able to see what he might have photographed. Not only that, he was holding a pad and paper, and he hadn't written anything on it. So, like, one of the investigators picked it up, like, oh, yeah, he said something about what happened. No. So, he died with that in his hands. He had multiple breaks and fractures of his ribs. His were all on one side. But again, it was a bunch of them. Plus, a portion of his skull was exposed. Like, his skin had been ripped back on his head. A forensic expert said under questioning that the rib breaks on Zolotaryov and Dubinina would make sense as the result of a shockwave from a bomb. It was repeatedly said they could not have just gotten that from falling.
Okay. That was my question was, well, they're in a ravine.
Yeah. No. Kolovetov's clothing also tested positive for radioactivity. It was his pants. He had what was listed as a deformed neck injury. That's all they say. For some reason, Dubinina and Kolovatov's autopsies were vague. It's one of the complaints that conspiracy theorists have about it. It just said her tongue was removed. That's all it said. There was no more detail. But then that blood was in her stomach. And so with him, it just said it actually, I put it in quotes so that you know it, deformed neck. So his neck had basically been broken. Oh. But it appears they think after death. So, and he had a large wound behind his ear. And he, of course, had missing soft tissues. Unlike the other 3, his death was attributed to hypothermia because Of the 4 there, the other 3 had injuries.
Okay.
Severe injuries that killed them. Thibault, Brignol, and Zolotaryov were the only 2 wearing shoes. It's been suggested they were outside the tent when whatever initially occurred, which is why there were so many layers of clothing available. It seems like some of them traded, like, here, I'll give you this vest or whatever. Because one of them was wearing just a sleeveless vest, so it had to have been somebody's underclothing. Here, let me help you keep warm.
Right.
So there was this whole mix. But those 2 were wearing their shoes, and it was the most of their clothing. As if perhaps they were standing outside the tent. Or they got dressed real well when whatever happened. Thibault Brignol had suffered a massive skull fracture. Like, I found a website and I'll post it because it's a huge investigative. It has files. It has the photos developed from all the cameras that were still good.
Wow.
Oh, that's why it took me until 5:30 in the morning, because I was just like going through this and finding interesting extra things that weren't somewhere else.
Yes.
And it has all the theories. It has explanations. The fracture was significant. We're talking a web of breaks out from a central endpoint place on the side of his head. And again, the fractures and breaks were said to have been caused by a massive impact, such as that seen in a car accident. That kind of speed impact, which is why this has been such an enduring mystery. I mean, among other reasons, like the way they scattered, why they cut out from the tent and ran that underclothed.
Why they cut their way out of the tent.
And the other big thing is there are not exterior matching wounds. To go, the broken ribs, there's no ribs puncturing through the skin. There's no abrasions with those cuts. The head wound, there's nothing external.
So
there was massive pressure.
Right. The bone is broken, but the skull is broken, but there's no scrape on his scalp.
And there's no bone coming through, and there's no actual cut through showing. So
because if he was hit with a hammer or hatchet,
and they were asked if somebody had hit them with a rock, could it have done that? And the examiner said no, there would have been exterior wounds. So it was very much a pressure thing. One of them also had some sort of like gray foam on his face that had come up from his lungs, and they said it was the type of thing you'd see if an immense pressure was put on his chest. And he was just, and he was basically suffocating / drowning on his own fluids, because when you have that weight on your chest, you can't inflate your lungs. You can't. Right. So the edema.
What a terrible way to die.
All of it sounds terrible. The fact that whatever happened, they were out there in a snowstorm in negative 40 degrees with blowing snow, low visibility, and pain of various levels, just trying to survive. But it's like, why did they run so far from the tent? What made them run from the tent?
In the first place.
And and why were only 4 of them in the den? Why didn't they all build the den and just try and be in there to keep each other warm? Because it said they would have. That's how soldiers stayed alive.
Yeah.
If they had just all been in that den. I will say too, and it'll probably come up later, that those massive injuries that the 3 suffered, they said they could not have been moved had those been suffered at the tent. Because again, there were footprints, and the footprints were very calm. They were not running smeared. There was nothing of bodies being dragged. They walked away from that tent. So that also matters. The inquest closed May 1959 with the cause of death being a compelling natural force. Yeah. The files were then archived confidentially.
It's feet up?
Ultimately, it's come repeatedly back to avalanche. But I'll get to that in a minute too. In 1990, the lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, who had also kept a roll of film for one of the hikers for years in his private, he kept it. His daughter ended up donating it. There's a museum. Of course. Yeah. Later, he wrote an article in 1990 in which he stated the investigators had seen flying spheres in the area, but when they reported the strange sightings, high-ranking officials ordered them to drop it. Zolotaryov, again the military guy, one of the people who died of massive chest injuries, was exhumed in 2018. It was on the onus of a newspaper, which I don't even know how that happens. It was still said that his impact involved the force of a car wreck by the person examining him then. So they were still maintaining that he didn't just fall from his own height, for example, and break his ribs. The mystery around him is his DNA was not found to match living relatives. They reconstructed his face, and it matched post-war photos of Zolotaryov. So it was conjectured that the real Zolotaryov had perhaps died in the war and someone had taken his place.
Oh.
There's a bunch of conspiracy theories that I know, right? That I didn't include in here that involve several of them. He was a last minute insertion into the thing.
Oh.
There was another person who worked in some sort of lab. There was another person who had worked at the second worst factory after Chernobyl to have a nuclear meltdown who was then at this thing, and that had happened before. Damn. Yeah, so it was like, but I just had to stop and not go up. But I'm telling you that website, the dyatlovpass.com, Dyatlov, that's a very interesting website for anybody who's at all intrigued by this to go and just look at all the evidence that they've gathered in one place. And they have links to the actual medical examiner's files for them and stuff like that.
Wow.
So autopsy files. Okay. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case. I mean, it's famous everywhere. They're probably tired of it.
Yeah.
Hoping to find out whether the deaths have been caused by an avalanche, a slab avalanche, and this came up on more than one page, or a hurricane. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that one right there. There is an image and there is a body of water nearby, so I don't know if they were near a coast and this mountain is there, but I was like, a hurricane? When did you know there had been a hurricane?
A bomb cyclone, maybe.
I'm going to introduce you to a new phrase you can add to bomb cyclone. Okay.
I'm very excited.
On July 11th, 2020, the official cause of death was determined to be an avalanche. It is thought they were sleeping when the avalanche occurred, had to cut their way out of the tent, that they fled the avalanche. However, the tent was only covered by a small amount of snow. Again, I will be posting the picture. An avalanche leaves behind clear array.
Yeah.
In that,
you can tell it's been an avalanche.
They were able to follow their footprints weeks later.
Yeah.
Okay, so just throw that out there. That's why that one's never really worked for me. But Smithsonian Mag, if you go there, there's a whole video on how they think a slab avalanche could have occurred, which was a very specific kind of one where it's like a hard slab that moves over soft snow, and it could have just gone poof over the tent and scared them. Anyway, the avalanche thing has never made it. But they reclosed it and said, it's an avalanche. We've finished it. You can leave us alone now. So it's also thought there would have been more injuries had they been hit by an avalanche, and suffocation is the big cause of death in an avalanche, not hypothermia.
None of them died of suffocation.
No. They tried to say the slab avalanche could have caused the injuries to the ribs and the head. Again, they would have had to carry those people, at least the head injury.
Yes.
Would have had to have been carried away. They specifically asked the forensic examiner, and he said he would not have been able to walk on his own. That head injury was so severe.
Okay.
Once that head injury occurred, he could have been conscious for up to 2 hours, but he wouldn't have been moving or speaking correctly. He certainly couldn't have told him how to build the den. Okay. The footprint pattern showed the group calmly walked away from the tent. There was no scattering and fleeing. This was a calm single incision in the tent and a calm walk to the woods.
That's the part that gets me. Why did they have to cut their way out of the tent?
Right.
That just
Did they think there was more snow on them? Did something scare them? A lot of theories are that something scared them. But again, they didn't run.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it was repeatedly said they were brave. They tried to survive. They were calm. They tried to do what they could to spread out their clothing. They built a fire. They did these things. There was no panic when they were down there at the bottom of that hill.
Right.
So
yeah, so they built the fire. What happened to it?
It went out. So I imagine those two were dead. And the others had tried to get up there and had built the den. Right? And so they came out and they maybe couldn't rebuild it. I know that a couple of the people that were no longer... The people at the fire, they didn't have the knives, they didn't have the matches. But two of the people had matches on them.
Okay.
In their pockets that were... One was in the den. One was, I think, Dyatlov himself. So there you go. Also of note, that area has never... That specific slope is not one for avalanche danger. There haven't been avalanches on it before or since. Also, Dyatlov and Zolotaryov would have known how to check for the possibility of an avalanche before camping. Both of them were very experienced. All of them were experienced, but both of those two were experienced in that sort of atmosphere on a mountain.
So I'm just like, but.
Yeah. In response to criticism that it couldn't have been an avalanche, an investigation was done in 2015 that stated that hurricane-force winds existed that night, along with temperatures down to -40 Celsius. The storm caused a small avalanche, which sent them to the forest for shelter. It was felt the reason 2 bodies were found at the fire was because the 3 with slightly more clothing on were trying to get back to the tent for warm clothes and sleeping bags, while the 4 who had remnants clothing from others, including the 2 at the fire, were trying to find a safer place to camp when they fell into the ravine and received their injuries. That's how they're explaining the rib breaks.
That don't have any external markings.
Correct. So they're like, if you hit a rock, it still breaks the skin.
Yeah.
One of the earlier accusations, they actually at first thought that the indigenous peoples, the Mansi, had killed them, but they only had these specific footprints. And again, no sign of a fight, and these were peaceful people, so no, they didn't kill anybody. And in fact, one of them was the one that, out hiking with his dog, found the last 4 bodies. It was quickly eliminated as possible cause. Additionally, it was thought that UFOs or abominable snowman / Yeti could have done it. Ball lightning was suggested as something that scared them.
Okay.
A 2019 Swedish-Russian expedition felt a katabatic wind had occurred.
A what?
A katabatic wind basically carries dense air and rushes down a slope at hurricane forces.
That makes the most sense out of any.
Doesn't it? These winds are rare and violent, and not only that, they did have a specific case that they knew was attributed to that in a different part of Russia. I forget what year it was, and all but 2 of the people died.
Wow. Okay, so, but that one actually sounds plausible.
Right? Their theory went on to explain the snow on the tent was put there intentionally to make sure the tent didn't blow away while they went to try and seek safer shelter in the forest. But then why'd they cut out instead of... Yes. A theory proposed in 2013 was that a Kármán vortex street had produced infrasound that caused panic. It creates a kind of infrasound that can make humans panic.
Oh, what?
Yeah. I decided just not to go more into that because I was looking up Kármán vortex street and then infrasound... But it can make humans panic. It's like a pitch such that it can...
Kármán vortex what?
Kármán vortex street. And I don't know why street is in there.
I thought you were saying shriek and I was mishearing you.
Oh, it's like a...
No, you were saying street. Wow.
Street.
What the... Who names
it
these
can cause
things?
people to panic.
Okay.
And because
it's like a dog whistle.
Yes, pretty much. And so that could have caused them to flee. Again... And then they would have been out of range of the natural creation of the sound once they got to the woods.
What creates that sound?
A Kármán vortex street, MB.
What is that? How does it make the...
It's something about a natural movement of air, basically, in certain circumstances that can create it. Yeah, I was going to just write down the whole definition, but I was like, how many definitions am I going to have to read about katabatic winds and... Kármán vortex streets and infrasound. But there is more on that website if anybody wants to look it up. It's also been thought that the Soviet military was doing tests. This is one of the big ones that I heard.
Ah, right.
One theory involves parachute mines, which were a Russian thing at the time. They actually detonate in the air.
Oh, okay.
Instead of when they hit the ground. So it can cause internal damage like that found on 4 of the hikers, because the one did have the fracture as well, with little external damage. It's been shown that this is how it does. There had been sightings of glowing orange orbs in the sky in that area reported, and the hikers had supposedly photographed those orbs, but I didn't find any of those pictures. So, I don't know if they were mentioned in a journal or what. There were journals, by the way. They were journaling. That's how they knew they stopped here and why the guy thought. The other big military theory is that radiological weapons were tested, but there was only that radiological signature on 2 of them. And it was very faint. So, nobody knows where that came from. And they had also thought maybe something radiological was involved because, or, radiation was involved because the victims had discoloration of hair and skin. But it was pointed out that that was actually a part of the mummification process that would occur in a cold. Yeah. Like, it was like an almost orangey skin and like a purpley or brown hair. Yeah. Finally, some think a U.S. spy plane might have dropped a photo flash bomb that scared them into fleeing and injured 4 of them. and really I say finally, but there are others that I didn't point out. I always, I wonder, but the tent was warm and they had a little heating thing in the tent, like a little cook stove. And 9 bodies in there would have been warm enough. Like, they were prepared for this. But hypothermia can cause something, I forget what it's called. It's like paranoid undressing or something. It's not paranoid, though. But it can cause them to feel this warm burning, basically. Yes. And they start taking off their clothes. So they were like, is that why they were unclothed? But no, it sounds more like it's because they were unclothing the dead people at the fire, and that they were exchanging clothes. But at the fire, they took those men's clothing that they had on so that they could try to survive after those 2 died. So those appear to also, not only were the first to be found, they were possibly the first 2 to die. If there were people alive to move them, most likely the people in the den that was only 300 feet away. Okay.
Damn.
Though officials feel the avalanche explains the issue and that it's closed,
nobody else does.
Many others disagree and are still trying to find out how the hikers died. There's an organization that's dedicated to continuing to research this. At first, they thought because they were like top secret archived after they closed the case, but apparently this was the thing they did. They closed their cases and then they weren't available for people to look into. Right. This wasn't specific to this case. So that was a big part of the conspiracy theory at the beginning, is that, it had to have been the Russian government. The fact that the bodies were moved respectfully, the fact that there were injuries that maybe somebody fought, that maybe there was something else going on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why are there
it's just too
injuries
weird.
That make it look like there was punching involved? Because it was fight-type injuries on their knuckles and the backs of their hands. Why were those 3 so severely injured?
So my question would be, if there were injuries on the hands, did they check for DNA belonging to other members of the party? So you could say, this guy hit this guy.
I don't even think DNA was really a big...
Oh, no. It would have been too long ago.
Yeah. So, but no, they didn't. And not all of them, like the 3 that were crawling back up to the tent, for example, they did not have the type of bruising on their faces and on their hands, because there's diagrams of each person's injuries, as the 2 at the fire and some of the ones in the den.
Oh.
So there was even a thing, they even examined if the women were sexually active when they died, just to rule this out, because one of the things is they felt that 7 of the men were fighting over 2, because there were only 2 women. They were not sexually active. It was shown, and no, they were. These were serious people.
It makes my brain hurt. And men and women.
It's amazing, though, isn't it?
Yes, and men and women can be in a tent together and not be
right. And none of them were known to be in a relationship. Yeah. There was no thing like that. They were just wanted to go hiking.
Lord.
So, to end it on a sort of positive issue, Yuri Yudin actually lived to age 75. He was the one that came back.
I bet he's glad he did.
He died in April 2013.
Wow.
And that was despite, he had like congenital heart defects and stuff. And so he lives to 75 because he had joint issues and turned back on day 2.
Now, sometime this year, and it's a hiking crew went back up, and they were late coming back, so of course it hit all the news.
Yes, because I shared the article to go back and look at it later.
Yeah, and so I did.
As
soon as I read that article, I'm like, gotta go in and see, and they were just late.
Yes, and the thing about that is it's normal. That's why they didn't panic until another almost 2 weeks had passed after because
they were experienced and their families knew, okay, if they say they're going to be back on the 12th, it could be a few days.
Yeah. So that's a big part of the mystery too, is that they were very experienced. They knew what they were doing. So how did this possibly go so wrong with people with so much experience? And just, why did they go so far from the tent? Did they think that there was more of an avalanche coming if it was like a little slab avalanche or whatever, But it's just really interesting. There are pictures online if people want to see, because they did document. There are the bodies. I'm not going to post those.
Thank you.
That's not I don't feel that's our role. No. I will tell you they're there for the people who like to look at them. And so they have, it was just It's surprising they found them. The tent was still, here's the thing. If it was an avalanche, there couldn't have been that much more snow even. Because again, their footprints were trackable. Now they were wiped out down toward the tree line.
Right.
But up here where the avalanche is supposed to appear, they're still there. And the people were buried, like the snow had blown over them. So the initial pictures of them is like maybe some fabric that you see, right? And then they find the bodies underneath.
That's just, it doesn't make any sense.
And crazily, they couldn't have had any more big snowstorms because the fabric was sticking out.
Yeah.
But then how were the four buried under 13 feet of snow?
I was going to say, but if it was on a slope, it would be exposed to the wind.
Yeah, so it would blow away.
Whereas in a ravine, the snow falls, it doesn't get blown away.
Yeah.
So much.
Or then it melts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've always loved this story because there really is no explanation that, sure, you can close it and say it was an avalanche, and maybe it was, but there are a lot of strange circumstances involved afterwards. Dubinina, in the picture of her as she was found, she's kneeling with her head against a rock. And then her knees are like in the water. But the water is flowing down the rock, which is why that's soft tissue then. Because otherwise that wouldn't make sense. And you know, the tongue is a big thing. A lot of people are like, nah, it was just an animal that ripped it out afterwards. Okay, fair enough. Except how long were they exposed after the 13 feet of snow were gone? And they were found. I don't know.
And that wouldn't account for the blood in her stomach.
And they were so... I'm surprised there wasn't more predation.
Yeah.
We're not talking about... Like, they're not... The injuries are not that a bunch of stuff... Except for a tip of a nose and a tongue would be the only things that would be eaten. I don't think so.
I mean, eyeballs
So that's strange, isn't it? Their eyeballs, two of them had missing eyeballs. But again, they were in the water.
And I would expect if it was predation, they would all be missing their eyeballs because...
Right. I mean, are there no packs of scary Russian wolves that you hear so many stories about?
Crows.
Like, that's a big thing. Right? Birds. Why didn't they get predated on more? The ones that are still buried, okay.
You were right. But it's just too weird.
Yeah. So, feel free to send us your theories.
Yes.
What have you found that's excellent? That Smithsonian link that I'll share that has the video, that was just done in 2021. Wow. Where they did a model and all of that. So it's in there and they truly believe that was it. But I don't know, maybe they just have decades of misinformation to get rid of. But that one site has the medical examinations.
But you can't. How would you apply that pressure to crush someone's skull without leaving a mark? I just can't figure out any way you'd be able to do that.
And that's the thing is that it's basically been, well, they fell into the ravine and that's where they cracked their various...
They fell down, go boom.
Body parts. Yes. So, all right. So, yeah, send us your theories, but send us any stories. We like unsolved mysteries too, so feel free to send us those. That's your call to action.
Yes, we want to know. We have a question. We have a specific question for you.
And we will be posting on Facebook so you can answer it there.
Yes, we want to know, what is the scariest thing that has ever happened to you personally?
Yes. Now, if you want to do a longer one that you want us to share, always feel welcome to send that to us that we share on the podcast. But otherwise, if you just want to do a short answer and have conversations with other people, then post about that when we post the question, which will be, if you're listening to this right now, it's already up on Facebook. Go look.
Or, if I'm posting it, it'll be up tomorrow.
And over the next week, we'll be sharing photos from our stories on our Instagram.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning back in this new season.
Yes, we'll try all kinds of wild and wacky new things to entertain and mystify.
We do hope to bring on some guests this year to have some more, you can hear some voices other than ours.
Although, I don't know why you would want to listen to anyone else's dulcet tones.
Dulcet tones. I don't think anybody would ever describe my voice as dulcet. But, speaking of which, man.
Allison Janney.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's the actress from Mom. You're welcome.
Who is in Drop Dead Gorgeous. I knew. As soon as I stopped trying to think about it, I would remember it. That is my gift to you. So for everybody who is yelling at
Allison Janney.
Allison Janney, you idiot. Yes, it was Allison Janney. I don't know why it just came to me, but Yay!
Yeah, you did it. Like that could be your accomplishment for the whole week.
It probably is.
Congratulations.
Last week and next week. I have very low expectations right now.
I think we all do.
Yes.
And on that note,
have a good week. Have a wonderful week.
We will chat at you next week. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.